Ivy and Gecko acknowledges the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and future. Welcome to Hearts and Minds. Our podcast episodes feature conversations with highly accomplished mining executives and board directors. We'll explore critical themes relating to leadership impact, staff engagement and culture development. So tune in, enjoy the conversations and prepare to be inspired. I'm Alana Bray, the Managing Director of Ivy and Gecko, and this is our podcast, Hearts and Minds.
The best board meetings I go to are at the beach. I am a surfer and a windsurfer, so my happy place is really either in the water or in the wind. That's where I like to go to decompress. Our EVP for many senior executives is a little different than our peers. I mean, Westgold is a different business to some of our peers, and purposely so. We play to our strengths, and we've got a different personality and a persona than many of our peers, which appeals to some and doesn't appeal to many.
Our guest today is Wayne Bramwell, an accomplished executive and company director who has gained project and corporate development expertise across precious and base metal companies for nearly 3 decades. Since February 2020, Wayne has been the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Westgold Resources. Westgold is an innovative and progressive Western Australian gold producer operating 6 underground mines and 5 processing plants in the Murchison and Southern Goldfields regions of WA. The company is set to become a top 5 Australian gold producer following its recent completed $2.5 billion merger with TSX-listed Karora Resources. On each occasion that I have met with Wayne, he's been generous in sharing his thoughts and opinions. This conversation you're about to hear is no exception. In this episode, Wayne describes his approach to evaluating key managers and executives, and unusually for CEOs, he personally conducts first-round interviews to make a judgment on a candidate's personal values and whether they are fit to lean into the culture of Westgold. He talks about the top 3 qualities that Westgold executives must possess. He reflects on some of his mistakes and failures, and he tells us what really excites him. And you won't believe what his favourite movie is. But then again, we are talking with Wayne, so maybe you won't be surprised. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Wayne Bramwell. Thanks for tuning in.
Wayne, thanks for joining us in the studio.
Pleasure, David.
That's an impressive bio.
Wow, it makes me sound ancient or vintage, one of the two.
And congratulations on the great work that you and your team have done in recent months to secure the Karora deal.
Oh, look, full credit to the team there. That's transformational for Westgold.
Yeah, it's great news. Wayne, let's start with your backstory. What can you tell us about your early years and your family life? Where did you grow up and what was it like living there at the time?
Look, I'm born and bred in Western Australia. Grew up in Perth, public school boy, and in a family with no connections to the mining sector.
Cool. So how did the journey, why did you enter the mining industry and what was it like then and how different might it be today for someone entering the industry?
Look, it was really a happy accident based upon probably bad career advisory, but look, it's worked out okay. I think someone entering the sector today has far more information available to them about the careers that it can spawn.
I know you're fit and you're a keen surfer. In terms of your passions, when you're not around the board table at Westgold or visiting the operations, what do you do?
Look, the best board meetings I go to, David, are at the beach. I am a surfer and a windsurfer, so my happy place is really either in the water or in the wind. Yeah. That's where I like to go to decompress from my day job.
Yeah. Wayne, if I look at your career history, you've worked for small and mid-tier miners and also consultancies. How do you compare the value of the different experiences you've gained in those different environments?
Look, I've worked for private companies, public companies, small and large. I mean, each of those things have their own personality and challenges, and I think all of those things have fed into making me the leader that I aspire to be today. So, it's been great. Variety in this sector is a fountain which runs deep.
As you know, this podcast is all about leadership and engagement and culture development within mining companies. We've had a number of guests on the show, Wayne, and most of them have expressed the belief that leadership is a set of learned skills and behaviours. that most people can acquire, irrespective of their background and their position in the organisation. What do you think? And if you agree with that, how did you acquire the skills and qualities of leadership?
Look, I would concur. I think leadership can be learnt, and I see leadership as a journey. The approach that I've always taken was that you can learn something from everyone you work with, and some of the best learning experiences I've had have been from either the most painful or from the leaders which I think are challenged.
Yeah. You raise a good point there, and a lot of people would say that you learn more from your failures and mistakes than you do your successes. And we might come to that a little bit later. Wayne, it's been said that you can't win in the marketplace in terms of building a successful company until you've won in the workplace. I reckon you might know something about this because Westgold has a labour force of about 1,900 people, I believe, and over the past 12 months or so, your team has managed to reduce staff turnover by 40%. Now, that's an impressive turnaround. What's the secret sauce? How did you do it?
Look, I'm not sure it's that much of a secret, David. I mean, these businesses, or mining is a high-tech business, but it is a business about people. You are reliant on the people, and we've got 1,900 in our workforce who are out there every day in our mines and in our processing plants, trying to deliver the mission for the shareholders. If you can't get them engaged, you've got no chance of success here. So without people, there is no business.
So are you saying that the key to the turnaround, and it is, it's a whopping difference. The key to the turnaround is getting those people engaged, inspiring them perhaps to lock their sights on a common mission and go for it?
Completely. I mean, the workforce we have now at Westgold is far more engaged. They believe in the mission, and the mission is very simple. It's safe and profitable ounces. Getting them to buy into the cultural and the organisational transformation that we've done in the last 2 or 3 years has been absolutely critical to better performance. So for us, it was always about leadership drives culture, culture drives performance. I mean, people are the common thread in all of those three metrics.
Yeah, okay. Business strategy or culture, which one comes first?
Oh, I'd say strategy first, because really, again, but you can't deliver any strategy unless the culture's right.
Yeah.
And I've seen it work in reverse. You can have great assets and a great operating team as individuals, but if the culture's wrong, you don't get the performance.
Yeah.
Where on the flip side, a really strong team with sort of some average assets, if the culture's right, can deliver the performance and a better outcome for the shareholders.
It's interesting you say that. And in my experience, working with a number of clients who have consummated mergers or acquisitions, I find that many of the board directors and the senior executives tend to focus very much on the physical assets, the mines, the processing plants, the infrastructure that goes with an operating asset. What perhaps they focus less on are the people, the culture, the systems and the processes that need to be carefully knitted together and integrated. And I think therein lies a trap for many companies, that they don't realise the projected synergies and they don't leverage the full value of the merger.
Completely. And maybe that's a function that many companies like our own are run by engineers who understand the science and the engineering inputs and the physical assets. And most of my peers, myself included, we've either grown up with a science or an engineering background.
Yeah.
The important part about management and people is not something which I know I was taught about in my undergraduate degree. It's something which I've had to pursue in later life or through the School of Hard Knocks. And then once you understand the value of people, your approach to certainly M&A and growing companies changes.
Yeah. Are you able to share with us some of the challenges or even failures of your recent executive roles? What have you learned about yourself, and how has this helped you become a more effective leader?
Yeah, happy to share some of the failures. I'm just not sure how long this podcast is.
We've got about 30 minutes.
Okay, well, then because that podcast could run for a week. But sort of recent failures, and I see failure as one of those potential outcomes of actually having a go.
Yeah.
One I'm happy to share is about a more recent corporate turnaround I was asked to get involved in, and I didn't complete the mission there. And I think my failure there was not really understanding what the founders and the owners of the company really wanted. What they said, what they wanted, a turnaround, a restructure, actually was qualified. And my mistake was not understanding the unspoken qualifications of the sacred cows that weren't allowed to be touched.
Okay.
So I saw that as a weakness on my point on maybe being too literal and saying, okay, you want to restructure this business? We can do that. And not being very clear about what were the things which were to be left untouched. If I had have understood that, I wouldn't have taken the job, because that I was doomed to failure by not fully understanding about that there were some sacred cows that were never allowed to be touched.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And you know, of all the great leaders that I know, one of the common traits is the fact that they are prepared to reveal their vulnerabilities and their weaknesses. And I think by doing so, it encourages people to place trust in you, because they don't see you as a person that has all the answers to everything. So it's humility and transparency and vulnerability, I think, are key qualities in leadership.
And those three traits you speak to there are probably not typically spoken about or considered in the stereotypical CEO who is the desk punching, screaming, hard charging CEO. It's some of those soft skills hugely undervalued, and when you get people to trust you and be vulnerable and more importantly ask them for their input, the outcome I rarely find is poor.
Ego is a powerful thing in business, Wayne. So I'm wondering, are those qualities that we speak of, humility and being prepared to show your vulnerabilities, can they be cultivated? Can you get better at doing that, or are you destined to be the person that you are?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the humility piece is important. I mean, and ego, I mean, there's always egos in businesses. Maybe I'm just at the age now and I've had the journey where a lot of that's been kicked out of me, or I've learnt the hard way, or I've had good mentors who have said, hey, you need to focus on these things. Put your ego to one side. Look at what is good for the business, what is good for the shareholders, and that really starts to frame a different approach. Maybe it's an age thing, I don't know, but certainly I believe it's something that can be taught, and probably is a function of having some of those failures along the way and going through some difficulties whereby if you reflect, you go, wow, could have handled that better, or could have done that differently if I'd taken a different perspective on it.
It's a good point, and you can't diminish the value of experience and hard knocks and the wisdom that you accumulate. It reminds me of a sporting analogy. I'm a keen AFL supporter, and I remember Scott Pendlebury, the Collingwood legend, who was never particularly fast or agile, and I think if the pros rated him on football skills, he wouldn't be anywhere near the top. But he was a brilliant player, because at the age of 34, 35, he was still playing, and he could carve out time and space in a situation on the field simply through his football smarts. He could anticipate where faster, more skillful, more agile players were around him. And it always amazed me that at a relatively advanced age in the sport, he could mix it with the elite, even though he wasn't as skillful.
Sure. Look, finding time and space in football, or finding time and space in business, and particularly mining, is a critical function. I mean, often, this is a fast-paced business. Creating a scenario, and it's often through having the team around you to give you, personally for me, to give me the time and space to think about things differently, always ends up in a better outcome, particularly when my team is involved in that decision. So, look, I'm certainly not Scott Pendlebury, but I'm certainly not the fastest or most skillful player on the team.
Who's the surfing equivalent of Scott Pendlebury these days?
There's so many. There's so many. I mean, they're all fantastic athletes, something I'll never be.
Yeah, it was an Olympic sport, wasn't it?
Well, apparently. I mean, this is it. I mean, as was breakdancing, but, go figure.
Now, let's talk a bit about engagement of staff, Wayne. As the CEO and MD of Westgold, how do you articulate your employer value proposition to key managers and executives that you're considering hiring? And how is your value proposition different from other mining companies who are chasing the same talented people?
Look, that's a fantastic question. With senior executives, basically, I always do the first interview, and that's really about cultural fit. I mean, if the individuals are getting to that position to be interviewed, pretty certain they've got the capability, but it's cultural fit. So in those interviews, I'm really trying to test what they're like as human beings, what drives them as leaders, and the things which the experiences they've had, which have got them to that place. So the employee value proposition for me is about being very clear about the vision we have for Westgold, the things we stand by, our values, and the things that we will not tolerate. There are, again, shortcuts with safety would be that first point, and anyone who thinks who may not be aligned with our cultural values, specifically around safety, respect, and value, those interviews are normally pretty short.
This is interesting. So are you saying that with key managers and executive level people, you get involved in the first round of interviews?
100%.
Wow.
Yep.
That's not all that common.
No, and again, in some sense, it speaks to my dedication to try and build or advance the culture in our current business. I mean, a cultural change in my mind is a 6-year journey. We're 2 years in. We're in a really good place. The trajectory of the business and the momentum is going really well. The pride and I see in the workforce is a reflection of them leaning into the culture that we're building.
Yeah.
Really easy to unwind that by bringing in senior managers who are not aligned with the vision and the culture that we're trying to aspire to here. Hence, that's why I get involved very early.
Yeah, nice. We have a rule of thumb in our recruitment business, Wayne, that it's best to long list a candidate on the basis of competencies. You then shortlist on the basis of evidence of relevant achievements, and then you hire on values. And that just understates the critical importance of having people who are aligned with your philosophy on life and the way that you conduct your business.
And jumping back to your point too, I mean, our EVP for many senior executives is a little different than our peers. I mean, Westgold is a different business to some of our peers, and purposely so. We play to our strengths, and we've got a different personality and a persona than many of our peers, which appeals to some and doesn't appeal to many. And in some sense, the ones who can see where we're going and appeal to a culture which is communicative and clear about where it wants to be, they're the people that we want involved.
If you had to rank the top 3 qualities that you look for in a mining executive, the top 3 personal qualities or traits that would give them a competitive and sustainable edge in your business, what would those qualities be?
I think being analytic, and when I say that, not on a technical basis, about asking the right questions, being able to listen and ask good questions becomes more and more important the higher up the corporate ladder you go. If you get to a senior role in these organisations, you've normally got there on the basis of your technical skills, but that gets you to a certain point.
Yes.
Going to higher levels in anyone's organisations about your management skills and your ability to influence people to deliver an outcome that is required. So key skills, I'd say, humility is one. Again, getting back to your point about ego.
Yes.
Humility is key. Being able to question and challenge the status quo and being able to listen.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I speak too much and continually have to force myself to listen, because if I ask the workforce about questions about how to make the business better, if I give them the time to speak, they'll tell us the answers, which again, that's our role as senior leaders here, to try and get the workforce to tell us how to make the business better, because they know. They just need the opportunity to be given the opportunity to be heard.
And now we take a short break to acknowledge our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Halo Civil Engineering. Halo is a multidiscipline civil contractor that specialises in the delivery of complex civil projects across defence, infrastructure, energy and resources. A West Australian company committed to delivering dynamic solutions with a focus on zero harm, while having a positive impact on their industry, clients and the people they serve. For more information, search for Halo Civil Engineering on socials or visit halocivil.com. Ivy & Gecko is a leading talent and organisational consultancy dedicated to advising ASX small and mid-tier explorers, developers, and producers in the gold and critical minerals industries. Our firm's purpose is to enrich people's careers and improve workplace cultures through supporting the development and execution of talent strategy.
I'm really pleased you mentioned the quality of listening. You and me too. I tend to overtalk and talk my way out of relationships occasionally with people, and it's frustrating. So I need to learn how to listen better. It seems to me that when two people are having a conversation, very often the person doing the listening is really not listening with the intent to understand the other person's point of view. He or she is listening basically to get ready for the next statement that's on their script.
Sure.
So they're thinking about their next question. They're not being informed through the other person's response what their question will be.
Look, guilty as charged on that one, David. Absolutely. And often, I try and watch the physical cues too. I'm a big believer in body language, where the words may be saying one thing, but the body language may be giving you a different signal.
Yeah, and I think good listening is an indicator of confidence, self-confidence, and maturity. People who are nervous or perhaps defensive and doubting of themselves tend to fill the pauses very quickly with talk. Good quality leaders who are mature and self-confident and empathic are able to just listen, sit back and try and understand the point of view of the other person. Let's talk a bit more about culture development. Wayne, everybody's got a different definition of culture. How do you define culture, and who is responsible for its development within a business?
I look at culture with its most basic definition, which is culture is how we do things around here. Can't define it any more simpler than that. In terms of the owner of the culture, I think everyone within the business has the ability to enhance or damage the culture, but I don't see myself as being the owner. The whole business owns the culture. I may be a key driver of it, but I'm just one of a group of other senior leaders who are basically trying to drive the business along a set of cultural direction that is all about delivering a better outcome for our staff, stakeholders, and our shareholders. So I often see people with the title of manager, people and culture. I always laugh at that because I go, okay, so you're responsible for the culture here. I just think that shows a lack of maturity in some sort of corporate structuring whereby everyone owns it, everyone can damage it, everyone can enhance it, but the key drivers have to be the executive lead team and the board. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that about the title manager, people and culture. I often look at companies' websites, and in the About Us tab, if you click on it, it'll drop down to leadership team, which might consist of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 individuals. And I often say to myself, surely they are not the team that is responsible for showing leadership. I think it should be perhaps senior executives or board members.
Sure.
And then it takes away the implication that only that small set of people are leaders.
I think I'm going to have to go back and change our website because the criticism I made about people and culture, I think our website talks about the leadership team, which again, pinning leadership on a small group of people. I mean, some of the best leaders in our business are the most junior in our minds. I mean, I see good leadership at all levels across the business, and most of those people are wearing high vis. They are down the hole underground or on the surface in our processing plants. And if you watch, you see leadership, visible leadership being shown by people other than people with grand titles like mine.
Yeah, dead right. And I may have to look at my own website as well, Wayne. With the integration of the Karora assets and the systems and the people, how will you create a unified culture, or are you prepared to tolerate multiple subcultures within the bigger entity?
I'll maybe unpack that in reverse. Tolerating multiple subcultures, no. I mean, again, how are we going about integrating the business? From as soon as the transaction was completed, myself and some of the executive team went to all the goldfields or the Southern Goldfields assets and stood up in the workforce and said, this is what Westgold's about. This is the culture we aspire to. This is our values. So we were very present and visible. I mean, we are going through a weekly comms to the total business now as we're integrating these two businesses, because we are integrating the Karora assets with Westgold's. I mean, this business is now much larger. So for the first 30 days, we're doing weekly communications to the workforce. In the sort of 30 to 60 days, maybe those comms drops back to every 2 weeks, and towards the end every month. But the key of it early is to be upfront and visible. And to be able to look the bulk of the workforce in the eye and go, this is what we stand for, these are the things that we stand by, and this is the type of behaviours we will not tolerate, and let them choose whether they want to play on with the culture which we aspire to.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. Let's talk about some of the current industry challenges. Wayne, a hot topic of news over the last week or so was Regis's recent setback with the McPhillamys project in New South Wales. And perhaps that is further evidence that permitting approvals processes can be very tortuous to navigate and take a long time. Is Australia at risk of losing its status, do you think, as the world's #1 jurisdiction for mining investment, or have we already lost that status?
Look, I've worked overseas, as many people have who have been listening to this podcast. I mean, there's no place like home. There is a rule of law here, and yes, regulation may be of a different level than many places overseas, but they are just things we have to deal with. I mean, that's always going to be business as usual. Maybe we have to start to build into schedules around project development longer timetables for approvals, or start earlier, engage earlier. And look, I don't proclaim to have a great insight into the McPhillamys story, but from a broader perspective, I think Australia is still a great place to invest. I mean, we're seeing foreign investment here still, and having worked in Africa, a bad day in the Murchison has been could be a fantastic day anywhere in the African countries I've worked.
Yeah. And I guess one of the key differences between Australia and some of the African jurisdictions is the cost of doing business. The all-in sustaining cost is much reduced in parts of Africa than it is here, despite, perhaps a higher level of risk in terms of sovereignty and other issues in some of those countries. What should the industry do, Wayne, to better attract and engage young people?
Look, we talk about this a lot, often either within our own business or in the gold industry group, and using the gold industry group as an example, and gold as a specific commodity. I just don't think the broader sector, including gold, has been great about sort of telling its story. And when I say telling its story about the contribution of mining full stop to the Australian economy, and this is spoken to from a boy who had no experience in the resource sector and has built a life and a career in it. But, there's still a perception that mining is a dirty, low-tech career. Far from, couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, it's a high-tech business which is still connected with people, that can provide career opportunities to young people which they couldn't conceive, certainly career opportunities which in my mind would outstrip finance or construction or some of the competing careers that are on offer. So back to the point, I just don't think the industry's been good about mapping out where a career in this space can take young people. And if we told those stories better, it would address some of the issues about labour availability and attracting new talent into our sector.
I think you're right, and I think the industry is getting better at doing that. But you raise a good point about, and again, I think this is another quality of leadership, the ability to tell a good story with a good plot, a good storyline, and good characters. It's hard for people not to pay attention when you're pitching a really good storyline, and I just wish that a lot more executives would do a better job of selling the mining industry, particularly, those commodities where it is critical for us to produce those raw materials in order to electrify the world and decarbonise the world. But I think we've made some progress towards making it a more safe place for females to work. I think there's a lot
100%.
more work that can be done there. It's a critical industry, no doubt. We've made, Wayne, you're a gold industry executive, but if we look at other commodity areas, I think Australia's made some progress towards value adding through investment in midstream and downstream processing. I'm thinking particularly in the lithium area. Do you think we'll ever reach the status of being a significant global manufacturing hub of green energy products, or is that a dream too far away?
Look, maybe the word there is significant, maybe not significant on a global scale, but certainly an important player and a counterpoint to some of those significant larger players around the world. I mean, our jurisdiction is a tier 1 jurisdiction. It's safe.
Yep.
Most importantly, there's a rule of law here, and probably even more importantly, a talent pool which absolutely can lean into this new technology. So,
Yep.
our population probably constrains us in some sense, but our mineral wealth is without peer. We've got some smart people in this country. If we can if we can connect those smart people with capital to develop these industries, I think Australia will be a significant, a key player. Maybe it's not about scale, and maybe it's about quality, and add some balance to maybe some of the larger global players who probably play to more of a volume thematic over quality.
Yeah. Wayne, here's some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Come on, go.
When you think about people who have shown great leadership, either living or deceased, who is the one that you most admire and why?
I've got many, but the one which I spent a little time with, which I really, some of his approach to leadership and culture resonated with me, was Peter Bradford of IGO. I mean, IGO is a company I knew a little bit about through the phases of their evolution from version 1 to version 2, and the team and the culture that I saw Peter build is really, in some sense, the map that I'm using for Westgold.
Yeah, Peter was a one-off gem. I had the privilege of meeting him just on a few occasions and did some consulting work for him. But the care and the genuine interest he showed in cultivating the talents of young people, I've never seen before. He would go well out of his way to help anybody. And a sad loss to the world and to the mining industry.
Agreed.
What's your favourite movie, Wayne?
Mad Max 1. 1979, the cars, the motorcycles, the landscape, the noise. I mean, pretty raw, but again, all of those things speak to me.
No one has ever said Mad Max 1.
Look, it wasn't Mel's acting, David. It was more about all those other things I spoke about. But again, even after watching it 20 times, there's something about post-apocalyptic Australia which looks pretty real.
Cool. What's your favourite book?
Don't have a single book, but I've somehow ended up with a fascination about World War II submarine stories.
Wow.
I don't know what it is. Maybe a submarine and an underground mine is the same. You're both in a dark space and it's confined.
Wow.
But submarine books, don't know why.
Brendan Harris, when I asked him that same question, said his favourite book, and I can't remember the title, but it was about a Russian submarine captain who led his team in an incredibly leadership-worthy way through a lot of technical problems while they were undersea for a prolonged period of time. Yeah. So
a life and death scenario, that one.
Now, what have you changed your mind about recently?
Fantastic question. The things that I've really changed my view of in the last 2 years about what makes organisations great. Probably spending too much time listening to podcasts now, but that's how I digest a lot of this stuff now. Yeah. And it's really the connection between culture and performance and the secret sauce. Getting back to the point of great assets and a great team may not generate a great outcome. There's other less tangible things there, which is really culture and leadership, which is the secret sauce. Yeah. How to do that and how to deliver that is the things which I guess I've changed my view of in the last few years.
I think I may know the answer to this question, but what's your favourite productivity hack? That is, what do you do each day that helps you get the most out of your day?
It's an old-fashioned thing. I actually get some satisfaction out of an old-fashioned piece of paper day planner. I get some satisfaction or a false sense of organisation by being able to map out my tasks for the day,
Yep.
prioritise them, and if I can tick 2 or 3 of those off during the day, it makes me feel good.
Nothing beats a to-do list. It is so satisfying, isn't it, when you put a line through that item?
100%. I mean, it's not particularly tech, but if I can walk out of the office and I've ticked off 2 or 3 of those things, I think I've done okay.
Well, that's the one thing we have in common. I use those little yellow 3M sticker pads. In fact, my strategic business plan is contained on one of those sticky pads, would you believe? Primitive, but effective.
Effective.
What activity bores you the most?
Oh, God, my wife would say domestic chores, and she would be right. But I'll say domestic reticulation. The house I've got has the world's worst retic.
Have you heard of artificial turf, Wayne?
Oh my God, I am approaching it. But for me, domestic reticulation is my white whale.
Oh, God.
Using a Moby Dick analogy.
Yeah. Let's flip the coin. What excites you the most?
Certainly, my current role, what excites me the most is being on site with these workforces and going underground and talking to them and seeing the pride that the young people and the older people have in what we're doing. When I'm getting lectured by them about leadership and culture, I know we're on the right path because, and I see it in their images, I see it in their face. They're actually proud about what they're doing and their pride, I take great satisfaction from.
Yeah, terrific. Final question, and I haven't prepped you for this, so listen carefully. If you walked out of this studio into the world of 2054, in other words, 30 years from now, what do you think would strike you as the most significant difference in the way people live their lives?
Probably they would probably be less connected than they are now. Which is, we have this promise of AI and big tech making our lives easier. Sometimes I wonder, has it really done that? All it's really done is, in some sense, pushed people apart.
Are you a big social media user?
Not really, no. I mean, I follow the things I like. I mean, websites or pages of surfing and wing foiling and stuff that I like. But no, I wouldn't say I spend a lot of time scrolling.
Yeah, me too. I share your concern, if that's the right word, that kids these days are increasingly insulated in their homes and connected with their screens, and I do worry about their development of interpersonal and empathy skills as a consequence of that.
You can't build a team on Teams, and so I think that forces people back to a point of old-fashioned meeting, talking, God forbid, drinking a coffee. I really like that level of analog engagement.
I like that. You can't build a team on Teams. Can I use that one?
I stole it from my CFO, so you can basically, for you to grab that one.
Good on you. Wayne, it's been a delight to have this conversation with you. We've learned a bit more about you as a person and your philosophy in relation to leadership and engagement and culture. So once again, congratulations on the great work you and the team at Westgold are doing. Very proud that you're an ASX business doing some really good things. And thanks for being on Hearts and Minds today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Hearts and Minds. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a rating or share it with a friend. And don't forget to follow us and connect on social media for updates on all of our upcoming guests. I'm Alana Bray White, and I look forward to you joining us for our next episode.